Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished professional from California, USA, Mr. Clement Decrop. Clement, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Clement is the founder of the Idea Space. He's an author of a book titled The Idea Space, The Science of Awakening Your Non-Self. And he's an author, a founder, and a master inventor. So, Clement, before we speak about the Idea Space, tell me about your own journey in brief.
Yeah, of course, happy to. So I was born in Belgium and then I moved to Spain. And then when I was 6 years old, I moved to the United States. The first thought I had was, wow, everything here is so big. Um, and then I went to a small private school with 20 people until eighth grade. After that, went to high school with like 700 people in my grade, and then went to college at Penn State with 10,000 people in my grade. So it just kept going up and up and
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
I did mechanical engineering in school, and then did a one-year master's MBA, and decided to go into consulting at IBM. So even more people. IBM has like 300,000 people in the world. Um, but after working for 2, 3 years, I kind of fell into a purpose gap where I just didn't get much satisfaction and fulfillment from just working in that space alone.
Mhm.
So I went on a 2-year sabbatical, wrote a book, released some cards, um, like all the good things that you said. And now I'm working on a Gen AI meditation app that's coming out here in the next couple months, which is exciting.
Wow, fascinating. So let's talk about your book, The Idea Space, The Science of Awakening Your Non-Self. Tell me, what was the inspiration to write your book?
Ah, good question. So I'm a nerd. I don't know if you can tell already, but big nerd over here.
Mhm.
And so for as long as I can remember, I loved science, whether it was math, physics, chemistry, you name it. And when I got older, it was kind of that purpose gap, right? You kind of started questioning more of like, what is your bigger purpose? And just trying to have a better understanding of your mind so that you can do the things that you want to do. And one of the biggest questions I had was for how good modern science is, especially physics. It had yet to provide a sustainable model for describing the mind.
Mhm.
And so I asked myself some very clear questions, right? What if we took the basics of mathematics and identities and groups and applied it to the mind? What
Mhm.
would that look like? And that was kind of the impetus for the book. And from there, I just wrote about things I thought withstood the test of time, which is math, history, and physics.
Mhm.
And in a way, physics is history because you're always looking back in time. So that's always fun.
Mhm.
But the silver lining between all of these ideas was this concept of an idea space, which is a mental model for your mind based in math and physics. And
Right.
that's kind of how the book came to be.
And you use the word or the set of words, the idea space. What is the significance of these three words in the context of personal development?
Oh, good question. So I think one of the hardest things to do as a human is to decouple our thoughts from kind of who we are as like our center, right? In the science of objects, the science of things we can measure, like stars or computers or chemistry, it's super easy, right? You're like, that's a chair, that's a computer, that's a desk. But with our thoughts and emotions, it's like,
Mm.
this is my thought, this is my emotion.
Mm.
And in the Zen philosophy, one of the main sources of suffering is attachment. And so when we attach to our thoughts, emotions, sensations, and perceptions, we're bound to suffer just because those are impermanent. They're always changing.
Mm.
And so the idea space allows you to view your thoughts, emotions, sensations, and perceptions. Those four things are your elements of your idea space.
Mhm.
It allows you to view those elements objectively, right? Just like you would any object in space time.
Mm.
And that allows you kind of take a step back and judge what's going on in here and a little bit more objectively, a little bit more fairly, so you
Mm.
can be easier on yourself and kind of do the things you want to do in life.
Great response. And how do you address the relationship between thoughts and emotions in your book?
Ah, yeah. Thoughts and emotions are some of the trickiest things we can think of, literally, because we'll have a thought and then that'll just trigger an emotion. But the emotion itself isn't as simple as just like words on a page, right?
Right.
You'll feel it in your stomach, you'll feel it in your heart, you'll feel it in your arms. And so it's very important to be mindful of the arising of a thought, the passing of a thought, and both the arising and passing of a thought, because then you can kind of see the full scope of the emotions that come from that. And
Right.
why is that important? Because a lot of times the emotions will tint your idea space. So let's say you get cut off in traffic, your idea space will just get tinted red, let's say. And then for the next hour or two, you'll just be mad thinking about scenarios about that guy that cut you off
Mm,
when you could have just noticed the initial thought that triggered that and kind of like taken a
correct.
step back.
Correct. Well said. Can you also talk a little bit about how identifying the impact of thoughts can lead to a deeper understanding of our own life purpose?
Yeah, of course. So while we are not like our thoughts directly, whatever the mind frequently ponders becomes the inclination of the mind,
Mm,
right? So if one person thinks a lot about, let's say, something like sexual desires, that will impede and cloud judgment because that's what the mind will frequently think about. Instead, if you think about breathing, positive thoughts, more so gratitude, as cliche as it sounds,
mm,
those will be the thoughts that tend to kind of continue appearing in your idea space, right? And so I think that's why it's super important to be aware of those thoughts because as we all know, being human isn't the easiest thing to do in the world. We're all surviving out here, and it's easy to get caught in thought spirals that can be pleasant or unpleasant. And so just having that lens that you're able to see it objectively is mighty helpful.
mm. And for my viewers and listeners, could you give us an example or an anecdote to illustrate how our thoughts could have a better understanding of our own life purpose?
Yeah, of course. So it's really hard to know what you want to do in life. And I think that's true for everybody. And I think one of the biggest things to understand is the concepts of objective realities versus imagined realities.
Mm,
Objective realities are things that are true no matter what. So for instance, math. 1 + 1 is 2. That was true a million years ago. It's going to be true a million years from today. Imagined realities are things that are only true because we believe them to be true. And a derivative of this is called intersubjective realities. For example, words. The words that we're using to communicate today is English, right? But back in the day, there was Latin, there was Sumerian, and now they don't exist anymore. So in the future, English will also cease to exist. And there's other forms of intersubjective realities like money, governments, companies, and all of these other kind of institutions. And a lot of times in life, just because the way the society is organized, we put a
mm,
lot of energy towards how much money you're making, what's your job title, what do you kind of like all those things. And the conundrum here is they're impermanent, right? They're bound to change over time. And so if you strive to have a specific title or a specific amount of money, by the time you get there, you're going to want something else.
mm,
And so by being able to have a better understanding of your thoughts as to what's real and what's an objective and what's an imagined reality, you can kind of shift your energy towards things that are more objective, like health, relationships with other people. And in my experience, I know it's going to be different for everybody. That tends to a happier perspective on life because when I was looking at my life as being like, I got to get this title, I got to do this, I
mm,
want to be a partner at this company, it felt like a rat race, right? And there's other forms of that wherever you are and whatever you want to do. And so just being able to have that understanding and just take a sigh of relief
mm.
allows you to see more clearly what you actually want to do.
Great response. Clement, how does your book integrate scientific research with philosophical insights?
Oh, I like this one. All right, cool. Yeah, that's like the whole thread of the book.
Mm,
I have a diagram in the book where the idea space is like a Venn diagram of Zen and then a Venn diagram of physics. And it's like the union of the two.
mm,
So at its heart, an idea space is the first exact solution to Einstein field equation in nearly 60 years. So that's kind of the core scientific perspective of it. And the conundrum is that in the science of objects, things we can measure, we can use rulers, we can use timers, we can use semiconductors to measure things. In the science of the first person, which is your idea space, it's very difficult to use those same tools of measurement, right? We have fMRIs, and maybe in the future, Neuralink will find a way that we can upload brains, and
mm,
that'll be great. But until then, this is where we are. And so we need a new set of tools in order to better understand the mind. And
mhm,
that's where the concepts of like meditation, mindfulness, Zen Stoicism, the headless way, all of these different sort of techniques to observe the mind are very useful because they allow you to view and measure your mind in an objective way, just like you would measure something with a ruler.
Mhm.
And that kind of goes deeper into the philosophy of it because no one really knows what this life is,
Mhm.
and you kind of have to measure it for yourself. And so using those tools allows you to do that in a way that's fun and unique and devoid of I.
Well said. Well said. And what exercises or practices do you recommend for readers to awaken their non-self?
Mm, that's tough. It really depends on where you are in your journey.
Mhm.
Because there's people who've been practicing for years on end, and then there's people who've have no idea what mindfulness even means, right? So I'll give an answer for both. Um, for people who are new, I would say just pick up just download an app, Headspace, Calm, and
Mm.
just start your practice with breathing exercises and very particular like body scans. Just start with the basics and just try to hone your awareness.
Mm.
For more experienced people, it's all about experiencing new events in life and new perspectives. So, for instance, there's a meditation practice called the Headless Way, which was developed by Douglas Harding. And it's just a very unique perspective where instead of thinking where your head is, you
Mm.
just let the space of the world be where your head is. And it's
Mm.
very peculiar experience, but it allows you to kind of see the world yathabutam, which means just as it is, which is very important. And the last thing that's I think applicable for both people is this concept of a koan. And so in the book, the koan is Japanese for public case, and it's a tool that Zen masters use to teach their students an ineffable truth about the world.
Mm.
And so what how this relates to the idea space is it's the identity of an idea space. It
Mm.
captures the pure essence of an idea at a point in space and time. And so koans are like a quote, a song, something that you hear that really just hits home. It's like hitting a brick wall. And so, like an example of this is in the concept of impermanence, since we've been talking about it, by Heraclitus, the quote that says, "No man steps into the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man."
Mm.
And so, if you just open up your mind to receiving these sort of quotes, songs that really just hit home on who you are, write it down. And then over time, you'll have a really long list of
Mm.
beautiful koans that you can come back to and use that as your guiding light.
Fascinating. Fascinating. So my next few questions relate to what you refer to as reinventing our conventional understanding of the mind. Um, how do you define consciousness in the context of your work?
Yeah. Ah, man, an impossible question to fully answer correctly.
Right.
But in the concept of an idea space, so your idea space consists of your thoughts, emotions, sensations, perceptions, and the empty set.
Mhm.
And then consciousness is a light that you shine onto your idea space. Um, Fairly simple definition, but I feel like consciousness is one of those items that is so elusive to properly define because as
Mhm.
soon as you try to define it as one thing, it changes to something else. But yeah, that's how I would define it in the framework of an
Okay.
idea space.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about the revolutionary solution to Einstein's field equation and how it relates to the mind?
Yeah. Okay. So this is gonna be fun. So the whole concept of an idea space is that it has zero measure. So what does that mean? That means if you hold something like a pen, you can't see it, but now you can. Clearly, I can see it. Clearly, you can see it, right? But what happens if I close my eyes and I bring to mind a mental image of this pen? Well, in my mind, I see the pen.
Mhm.
But then Ashutosh, can you see the mental image of the pen that's in my mind?
No. Hmm.
Right? So this whole idea that your idea space, all your thoughts, emotions, sensations, and perceptions has zero measure doesn't mean there's nothing there
Hmm.
because something can have zero measure and uncountable depth. And
Right.
so going back to the concept of general relativity and Einstein's field equation, you have your metric, which is how you measure distance in space-time. That's kind of like the core building block of general relativity. And so the metric in this case is zero, but just because it looks like there's nothing there doesn't mean there is nothing there.
Amazing. Fascinating. Clement, could you also talk a little bit about the impact of technological advancements on the understanding of our mind?
Yeah, of course. I think the fMRI in itself is fascinating, and just our ability to map the neurons of very simple organisms and seeing how that evolves over time. I think, especially with like the work that Neuralink is doing and being able to just have this connection between the mind and computers is beautiful. And like the concept of an idea space is meant to be proven wrong, right? Like that's the whole point of science. You don't want to prove anything is true in science. It's only about falsifiability. So for today, I can't see what's going on in your head, and you can't see what's going on in mine. In the future, that will change.
Hmm.
So I think that in itself is beautiful. And then the inspiration of like deep learning with like the concept of like neural networks and the accomplishments people have made with that is also breathtaking. And I'm excited to see where it goes in the future.
Fascinating. We spoke about non-self a few minutes ago. How does your concept of the non-self differ from other philosophical or psychological theories?
Mm. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, the non-self at its core is the concept that your name, is simply another appearance in your idea space. So a good way to better understand this is a quote by Richard Feynman, who's a great physicist of the time. He says, "What is a chair?" Right? If we look at a chair, we'll see, okay, that's a chair. But if we zoom in, we'll see, okay, that's kind of wood, that's paint, that's some dust falling off. So to say what is a chair very precisely is very difficult.
Hmm.
So we normally deal with approximations and idealizations. So in a similar way, when I see you, I see Ashutosh. But if I zoom in more, I would see skin cells. If I zoom in more, I would see molecules. And similarly, if I zoom all the way out, you would become a dot on Earth. And so you have all these different layers. And
Hmm.
so to say who you are by just like the epidermis, whatever is inside
Yep.
your epidermis, is could be misleading, right? And it's just one layer of your non-self.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of the whole idea of non-self, is this the fact that you are more than just your name. You
Hmm.
have all of these hidden fractal layers that make up who you are.
Fascinating. And what role do cultural differences play in shaping our understanding of consciousness?
Mhm. Yeah, this is a good one too, because it's interesting because it's you look at a like very naive level, you have like Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy, right? Where Eastern philosophy is more by like feeling,
Hmm.
right? It's kind of like has, especially with like Buddhism, it's been around for 2,600 years, and it's these principles that are learned, whereas Western
Hmm.
is more of like it's not rigorous, but it's just like cutthroat, dry, like it's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. And so I think when I first writing the book, I thought that the idea space was a beautiful medley of Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy. And so when different cultures are able to mix in that sense, that's when the idea space is able to discover and show new things, right? Um, and so over time, I think as the world just becomes smaller and smaller, it'll be interesting to see how cultures kind of assimilate, but still like stay in their own brand and evolve. It's going to be wacky, it's going to be weird, but it's going to be fun.
Yeah. And what role does meditation play in understanding and awakening our own non-self?
Mm, yeah. So there was a good quote. I might butcher it a little bit by a Zen master that said, "Awakening is inherent in every individual,
Mhm.
but if you do not practice, not none of the Buddhas will ever be able to save you."
Mhm.
And so I think the idea there is that practice makes perfect, right? Like people play sports to get better at something.
Mhm.
And just like you need to get your body better, you need to get your mind better. And you have all these different tools and different types of meditation practices, but the concept of meditation is the hours of practice that you put into to
Mhm.
get where you want to be.
That's it. So, time for two more questions. How do you see the future of consciousness research evolving in the next few years?
Mm. I think it'll be interesting because it depends. You have like this concept of the idea space where it can be viewed as a more like theoretical standpoint, and we can break it down from there. And then you also have the concept of where with the advances in artificial intelligence, we can interact with the brain more. Or maybe we create new life in a way where you create a robot that has the five senses and the thoughts of ChatGPT, let's say. And so in building that new sort of system, maybe we learn a lot more about what it means to be alive, what it means to be conscious, and how the mind works in itself.
And my last question to you, Clement, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. What are some of the takeaways you want your readers and listeners of readers to take away from your book, The Idea Space?
Another good one. So I think the biggest takeaway is to write down your koans, because like we were talking about a little bit earlier, it's super easy to get caught in those thought spirals, and some of them are very unpleasant and can lead to not great consequences, right? But when you have those koans written down, you're able to refer back to them, and you're able to. So one of the key points of the book is mirroring your mind to the universe. So in the universe, you have black holes, stars, and planets that build the large-scale structure of space-time. And in your mind, a koan acts like a black hole. It's a warp. It's just rips through the fabric of your idea space, and everything's just spiraling about around it like a black hole would, a galaxy, right? And so instead of just spiraling continuously and continuously, your koan, when you like refresh your mind with it, it's just like jumping into the black hole. You end the spiral, you end all that, and you just whoosh, are able to start anew. And that can come in very handy in life. So I think that would be the biggest one, writing down your koans.
Wonderful. And on that note, and your amazing comment, write down your koan. Thank you, Clement, for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. I think we went into considerable depth about your book, The Idea Space, and of course, reinventing our own conventional understanding of the mind. I think we covered a lot of ground about on relationships, on thoughts, on emotions. We also spoke at length about the non-self. I learned many new things from you today. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for giving me the space to speak. It was lovely.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.